We are ready to rumble. Well. Welcome to MonstaTV. I am Fred, your friendly neighborhood alien. We are broadcasting from the Monster Cafe as usual, and today we're back with a little bit more intellectuality when it comes to the subject of feminism. First of all, we're going to have a look at a video from somebody that I kind of like. He makes short, cool videos. His name is Alexander Grace, and he was kind of like a pickup artist, you know, and at some stage he just had enough, and he had enough of this type of, making room for this kind of feminist idea, and women are just as tough, as strong, as good, as intelligent as men. And he, at some stage, he just had enough of covering up, or let's say, excusing a lot of that behavior. And then he started coming out really strong with this anti-feminist streak. Now he's going to give us a little short insight into what women were like. This is a video he has there from Australia in the 70s. And when they were asked about feminism, like what did they think about women's liberation? And what the attitudes were of the women, you know, just walking around on the street there. And then after that, we're going to be looking at a video from Hannah Spear. Once again, Psychobabble, as she goes into what happened in psychology, because I think that obviously there is a parallel with how psychology was infiltrated by feminism, and how they got to change the worldview of women and, fancy pants men. So let's get into this. So let's have a look where this video is. Here it is. So let's go for it.
What does International Women's Year mean to you?
I don't know, it doesn't worry me. It don't have any effect, you know, I don't sort of think about it. Do you?
I don't take interest in women's lib, it doesn't worry me at all, I don't like it.
Why don't
Oh, you gotta love Australia.
Yes.
So different, isn't it? There's no embarrassment or fear from these women by saying, yeah, I don't care about women's liberation. This is from 1976, these street interviews. A lot of people don't realize that feminism was not popular. Like among the masses, the women in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, only like 10% or 20% actually identified as feminists.
True.
The rest just ignored them. Like they were completely indifferent to the whole thing, or just...
Yeah, the whole hippie movement goes alongside that. They were going hand in hand. The hippie movement, gays are good and all the rest of that. All that stuff was all fringe. And people were looking down on it, and they were really disgusted with the whole thing as well. And you have to remember that those women, those feminist women, were actually the most disgusting women around you. You know, they slept around, they had diseases, and they were dirty, and they were all this. That's how they were perceived.
Saw them as like whingers. Feminism may have started all those decades ago, but it didn't really achieve true victory until kind of like the late 90s.
True.
It took decades and decades for the feminists to shame all the other women into actually swallowing this nonsense.
don't you like it?
I'd rather be the way I am. I like to be under my husband's thumb.
I'd
Wow.
rather be the way that I am. I like being under my husband's thumb. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Don't you dare suggest that men and women have a natural reciprocity. Don't you even think that, you misogynist. I'm pretty sure that the ideology of feminism, which has existed for 50 years, knows a little bit better than millions of years of evolution.
Okay, evolution is a lot of bollocks, but that doesn't matter. It's still, it didn't exist only 50 years. That's another thing that's not entirely true, but the premise is true all the same. You know, something that they just pulled directly out of their ass, supposed to be more, have to have a way more on a scale of logical and on a scale of doable and so on. What these women are all about is, why would I not have a husband that protects me, pays for us all, and is there for us all? And why would I throw him out? Why would I not have one? What the hell is wrong with you women? Why should I stand alone in the world without children, without a husband, without a home, and without a purpose? Feminists started pretending that women have their own purpose. But how dare you? Well, how dare you take that purpose away from women?
reckon the man should wear the pants, you know. He should sort of be the boss in the family, you know. Sort of, well, I'd rather him go out to work and earn the money than me go out and earn the money and look after the kids, you know. But, I sort of just don't believe in it.
What does
This is so addictive. I will never get tired of listening to women speak common sense. This woman clearly knows that she's onto a good deal. She doesn't want to change that. She's there holding her beautiful baby and she's thinking, I'm sorry, why would I rather go into work and be belittled by some boss than stay home with this beautiful miracle of life that I created?
Sort of just don't believe in it.
What does International Women's Year mean to you?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
Has women's liberation affected your life at all?
No. I don't believe in it.
Why not?
I don't know. I've got no opinions on it.
Have you resisted it?
No.
Have you ever read anything about women's liberation?
No.
No, she just don't give a shit. It's like, shove it right up your feminist asshole. What the hell am I supposed to do? Liberate from what? Liberate from having a good life with a good husband and having children and having a real purpose? Because it's not just that, oh, women can have a purpose too. Well, they're not thinking about what they're actually saying. Having a purpose is an objective thing when you're a mother. You know, it is like the human race cannot exist unless we have children. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is. Any race, any species would just simply disappear if there is no reproduction. And women are an essential and very important part of the reproduction for the human race, right? So there was a real purpose that everybody recognized and that everybody honored. And it has always been honored. Now, there is certain ideologies, or let's say religions or something like that, where things went kind of strange and weird, but that's always happened to the human race, right? And so, like, say, certain parts of it. But it's the same case now with feminism. Feminism has ruined the birth rate all across the world. It's just incredible. It's just a load of insufferable bitches that rule it for everybody else. And at that time, the real women weren't going to let that be taken on them. They just say, no, I'm not interested. Are you resisting it? No, I'm not.
That is so good. When she says, have you resisted it? This woman's like, nope. Because you know what's more effective than arguing against something is just refusing to engage with it. Like, it's just beneath your attention.
When you can, yeah. When you can do that and it has the right effect. But when the stuff is coming from all sides, has infiltrated every fucking level of government and so on, then you're going to have to argue against it, of course. Yeah.
She's like, no, I don't care enough to hate you or even resist you. This women's liberation thing is not even worth thinking about. And you can hear the subtle shaming from this reporter lady, like this attempt to influence her, to try and force her into like socially conforming, like, hey, we're women, you know, you should be for women, right? This old lady's just like, no, sorry, not interested.
What does International Women's Year mean to you?
I'm afraid not very much, really. I'm a bit old to be worried, you know.
Do you ever think about women's liberation?
I don't, to tell you the
Oh my god, I don't know. I wouldn't know like where to be liberated to. Or like, where is this going to go? Why would I be liberated from what? Like, women in the West, the most pompous and well-fed women of the world, right? Nowadays, pretend to be oppressed. It's disgusting. And it was already disgusting in the 70s.
honest truth, no.
You know, it just occurred to me that if feminist theory was correct, then it would make sense that the older women who have lived through more experiences with men and were alive during the genuine patriarchy, they should be the most feminist, right? Like, they should be the most extreme in their feminism because they've suffered under men more than anybody. But these old ladies, they're like, no, it's fine. I don't need women's liberation. I don't think about it. What does that tell you when feminism is taken up, you know, as a cause by the youngest demographics of women who...
It tells us that these women actually had a look at life. They had comparisons and compared, and and decided, you know what, it wasn't so bad being a woman, because it's not that great being a man either. So, like, which is the one that I would prefer, which are the roles that I would prefer, and they just saw the truth. Well, you know what, I'm a woman, I would rather be a woman, and I like the role that goes along with it.
Barely out of high school, and they're like, men have been repressing me so much. There's old ladies who've lived through way less progressive times, have had way more experiences with men, and they're like, no, it's fine, like we're comfortable with this arrangement. It casts the complaints of these younger women in a very different light, don't you think? Like, what do you have to be complaining about? You haven't been alive for long enough to be a victim of anything that serious. Just chill the fuck out.
What do you think of those women like Jermaine
Just chill the fuck out.
Greer who want
Or
to
if they
change?
want to do their own thing, let them do it.
Yeah, but leave everybody else alone. Why does the whole damn world have to change for these bitches? What the hell?
But I say,
You don't feel a need for a change in your way of life at all?
no, quite happy.
This is where Australians get their live and let live reputation for, like, yeah, do whatever. Life in my country was just so good. No one wanted to be creating problems.
Do you think women's liberation is a bad thing?
Oh, I don't know. I don't understand it much. I'm inclined to think they can overdo all these things, really, don't you?
In what areas?
Yeah, I think it's this one that's going to tell us a bit of wisdom here, of a woman that has lived and has seen and has analysed and so on, and
What about equal job opportunity and equal pay and that sort of issue?
Yes, no, I don't quite go with it. I'm afraid I'm old-fashioned, really. I think the man is the important one, with jobs and the pay and that sort of thing, don't you? Really?
don't you?
Let's just talk about this gender pay.
So it wasn't her, so it doesn't matter. But there's a part that comes in here a little bit later now, and it gets quite wise about the whole issue. I don't want to say it before it comes. Let's just make it happen.
Pay gap, because the notion that men and women were paid less even back then for doing an identical job has been massively overstated. Like, yes, men across the board as a collective made a lot more than women. That part is true, but the difference between...
Just because more men were working. So if you took the money and added it all up that all the men were earning, and you took the money that all the women were earning and you compared them, then there was a big difference, because there was a lot more men working. That didn't mean that they were getting paid better.
between them shrank massively when they were doing the identical job. But feminist theory, it gets really upset whenever you start looking at the nuance of it. They just want to present the difference as the result of gender-based discrimination. But what they never acknowledge is the fact that married men significantly out-earn single women and single men. But no one claims there's discrimination against single men. You know, gender would have nothing to do with that. That undermines their argument. So they always hide that data. They don't like what that reveals. But historically, it makes sense that married men make more because wages have always tracked social roles. In this instance, the social role of the breadwinner. I found this data when I was researching a different video for my main channel, but I want to bring it up here because it demonstrates what I'm talking about. So you see there, at age 40, single men and single women are basically making the same. The one outlier, like that pale green line, the dotted line at the top, that's married men. But you see then that it's marriage, it's being a breadwinner that differentiates people. It's not gender. I mean, why could that possibly be? What a mis-
Well, because married men are way more reliable, right? They have a family to feed, they have a wife at home, they're way more reliable, they're going to stay there, they're going to work their way up, they're more likely to stick to the job that they have because it makes more sense to them. Yeah, way more reliable.
It's almost as if being responsible for providing for others, being a husband, being a father, somehow that brings out the best in men. That causes them to work harder. It creates ambition and drive, all that sense of responsibility. Their love for their family pushes them to advance in their career. It's such an obvious and simple, straightforward explanation. But no, let's listen to feminists,
And look at the single men, single women, and married women. Married women, obviously, because they didn't work as much as married men, right? So they're all around the same. There is no big difference whatsoever.
Men are just crazy patriarchs. You know, we've got toxic masculinity and we just love discriminating against women. We're just always looking for opportunities to pay women less. That's the more logical explanation.
I think possibly I'm like a lot of women and depend a lot on a husband, you know, on the male race, I guess.
And I
This is the one. Yes.
consider a liberated woman is a woman who does what she wants to do, thinks for herself, lives as she wishes, and is not dominated by male thinking. Also, particularly, of course, a woman in industry earning as much as a man.
But do you think women's liberation is a good thing?
I'm very sceptical about some of the extremes it's carried to. I think women are in great danger of being dominated by women.
There you go. Isn't that just amazing? At that time, that women are in great danger of being dominated by women. By other bitches, she should have said, but, you know, she's a polite lady. So I'll say it. That women are in great danger of being dominated by bitches.
Being told to liberate themselves by doing what other women want them to do. That to me is a great danger in the whole scheme.
Will you be doing...
What she just said there, that's kind of like the whole premise of my channel in a nutshell. It reminds me of the theory of intersexual competition by Dr. Danny Sulakowski.
We had her, an interview with her there, I think the week before last or so.
I did a video explaining that theory on my main channel. I'll put a link down below if you haven't seen that yet. Or just look her up on YouTube, Dr. Danny Sulakowski. She's done a bunch of interviews. She's great. And what she's pointing to is what this woman was just referring to. Women like bullying other women. Women getting dominated by other women. Because really, you know, why would you give your power as a woman over to other women? What makes you think that those women have your best interests at heart? They
definitely don't. Because you're in competition with them. They don't. And women are just simple, really horrible and aggressive competitors.
Your competition. You don't think they're going to lie to you, try and fill your head with a bunch of nonsense so they can gain a strategic advantage? And it's not a case of swapping out one system of abuse for the other. Like women were either going to be abused by the patriarchy or by feminism. That's the wrong framing because the patriarchy wasn't about abusing women. It was a system designed to protect women, to provide for them. That's what honor and chivalry were all about. It was
because of the children as well. It was all about the children, you know?
For women's comfort. It turns out that women are thoroughly incapable of liberating other women. It's men and masculinity that can do it. The right man can liberate a woman. He can liberate her femininity. That's what this channel is all about. We hate feminism, but we love femininity.
Thanks for it. There we go. That's well said there. Totally on the ball.
Anything to participate in International Women's Year?
Not particularly. Because,
Sorry, have you just noticed that all of these women, they're all holding back laughter when asked these questions? They're all stifling a giggle. They think this whole thing is a joke. Why did we take it so seriously?
Well, because it's just laughable. Feminists are just laughable. They're just fucking ugly women that don't get a man, or men are not interested, and then they get all bitchy and they want to ruin it for other women as a type of revenge.
I think that in a way there's too much made of it, that it should be just accepted as it is. Women are becoming far too dominant, so they're going to end up being women chauvinists.
Women chauvinists is exactly right. Oh, it's so refreshing to hear all these women. What the hell happened to us? You know, all of these women, even like these like new mothers and these sweet old ladies, they would all be labeled as like far right, reactionary extremists by today's standards. That's the real victory of feminism, is that it has managed to frame itself as though it's the center, it's the norm, instead of the radical departure from common sense that it actually is. I always just think, like, when I read your guys' comments in the comments section, you know, when you're detailing some of the stuff you've had to be dealing with in your dates or in your relationships, what it would have been like if you'd gone back in time and you could have dated like these kinds of women. How different an experience that would have been. So easy and straightforward. Women who enjoy being feminine. We need a time machine.
Yeah, we need a time machine. Well said. Well, actually, what we need is to wake up. To wake the fuck up. and women to get behind it and see what feminism is doing to them, because feminism is ruining everything for them. That's what's happening. It's just crazy stuff. And how did they do it? Like, what was it? It was psychobabble, right? So we're going to go back here to Hannah Spears, MD. She's a medical doctor, psychiatrist, and she's going to take on some of these complete stupidity. I mean, women that just simply don't want to go by science anymore. So psychology is not a science anymore. At the beginning, it still wasn't really a science because it was very theoretical, right? It was hypotheses upon hypotheses, and it was all about learning if there would be a way to categorize human behavior and the spiritual side, let's say the psychological side of the human being. Is there recognizable patterns that we can detect and then help people, you know? Because obviously we always had crazy people, always. And to be able to do that scientifically, you have to use the scientific method. You need things like a hypothesis, and then you have to, make experiments. You have to gather evidences and so on, and it's all evidence-based, and which is a very real thing for science. But because we can never actually know 100% sure in most things, so that's why when it comes to science, one has to be really careful that the evidences are actually reflective of what it is that you're trying to prove. You see what I'm saying? So, but psychology doesn't give a damn about that anymore. And this strange-looking weirdo freak here is going to tell us about it, right? We are going to see Hannah Spears in a second. So let's see what goes on here.
So positivism, this idea that our research and knowledge must be rooted in logic, empirical evidence.
Whoa. Wow, that's really bad, isn't it? Because all of your feminist bullshit would go down the drain. It's incredible, because that's the point. If you want to prove something, if you want to be able to make a real point in the world and say, look, it's like this and it is like that, you need evidences for it. Empirical evidence, right? That's the way to go about it, any science. But
is it important to have empirical evidence, data, and research? Yes. But can that be the only foundation for how we understand psychology, mental health, and human behavior? No.
Wow. So we just brush. Now we don't need any evidences anymore. All we need is this fat, weirdo-looking freak, and then she can tell us how it works.
This is why bad ideas never die in the psychological field. This is how we end up with nonsense like lived experience. The Psychobabble, where we expose bad therapy and the liberal narratives that contribute to our poor mental health. I'm Hannah Spear. Before we dive in, please support my work by liking and subscribing and sharing. If you become a member, a Psychobabble Insider, by going to our website, hannahspear.substack.com, and subscribing there, choosing a subscription option, then you can join us in the Psychobabble Insider members exclusive segment at the end of this, where we'll be talking about internal family systems and my take on that. So Psychobabble was always about how the psychological community is contributing to us becoming more psychologically unwell, and my colleagues' unconcern with the duration of therapy and how many patients are on our lists. And now I'm going to lay out the background, why that came to be and why psychology isn't correcting itself.
Yeah, it is a huge problem, because if we don't actually have any pattern recognition, if we don't actually have a map to map out the human psyche in such a way, because of course you can't do that in every detail, but you might be able to do that using principles. And if there's no way of doing that properly, or if you're not concerned with that, then all of your treating of patients and treating of people with their different categories of problems that they may have is all a load of shite. And it's just a money-making racket. That's all it is. And at the end of the day, even though psychologists are not made responsible when, one of their patients, their crazy fuckers, goes out and kills somebody, and even though they're in therapy, they're not made responsible. So without any responsibility, they can treat patients in whatever way they want, in fact, because of the fact that there is no logic-based, evidence-based analysis. Then obviously you can just make money. It's disgusting.
Last year, I helped out a friend of mine, and she studies psychology as an undergrad at King's College in London. But I was absolutely shocked when I read the essay question. Focusing on either personality or intelligence, evaluate the research literature on sex differences and or gender differences with a view to outlining how evidence for any such differences can be treated to foster a more inclusive and equitable society. As you can see, the question was never to investigate whether differences exist or what the evidence shows. It was simply assumed that sex and gender are separate concepts and that the role of psychology was to promote inclusivity.
Look, sex and gender cannot be just put in there as separate things, because if you take away sex, just take it away, there is no such thing as gender. Right? Gender has to be based upon sex, because it is, as they call it, the identity that goes along with the sexuality. So if there's no sexuality at all, if that doesn't exist, then there can't be any gender. So they're obviously connected.
I sent her solid cross-cultural studies on sexual differences in personality. But it didn't matter, because any citation older than 10 years old was simply disallowed. So that meant any study she used for this essay, which took more than a month to finish, that was the sole focus for a large part of that semester, were all studies that saw sexual differences and gender through a purely ideological lens. I used to love psychiatry, and once again I was left feeling disappointed in this field. Why aren't more people concerned or asking why so many psychological approaches we use now fail to have the intended effect? Why aren't we more concerned with our role in why the psychiatric burden of disease keeps on rising? Once upon a time, until the mid-20th century, psychology at least tried to approximate a science. Some say that was always a pipe dream, but at least it used to follow the positivist paradigm. This is where we seek objective truths through quantifiable empirical research. Pioneers like Skinner and Piaget, they might have had their troubles, they might have had their biases, but they at least tried to quantify and adhere to data. Even though their theories might have been flawed, their approach assumed that human behavior could be measured and analyzed. But somehow, over the past few decades, we have shifted from attempting this to becoming a field of relativism, identity-based theories, and subjectivity.
And the weird thing is that relativism, right, has nothing to do with relativity, by the way, even though they think it does. It has nothing to do with that. If all of us have our own truth, then there is no need for treatment, and there is no way of treating them. Okay? And there is no way of saying when a human goes too far. Well, he's a serial killer. It's just the way he's constructed. It's just the way, his psychology works. And it's right for him.
Instead of building on cumulative science, many psychology programs have pivoted to questioning and reinterpreting all the past findings through an ideological lens. Like in this student's case at King's College, the curriculum didn't engage with the decades of biological and cross-cultural research on gender differences. It skipped straight to recent theorists who assume differences must be socially constructed. And this reflects a broader trend. Older research, no matter how well replicated or cross-culturally verified, is often excluded or downplayed if it conflicts with the new ideological narratives.
And here you can see that the thing that we were saying at the beginning, feminism wasn't catching hold. Women were saying, no, I have it better with my husband. You know, I have it better with a man that protects me and sees to it that I have everything I need to take care of the kids and the household and so on. But because that didn't work, their stupid stuff, their silly and stupid shouting and screaming around, that's why they were all laughing, because feminists were just disgusting. They went into the fields of psychology and other fields and started infiltrating them. And they started, bringing narratives as ideological narratives into the whole subject matter. And they just, intellectualized around the place. A typically woman, right? Typically like the stupid woman. But I feel that way. Well, but it's not that way. Well, but I feel that way. That's not going to help us solve a problem. If we're going to just say, try to solve the thing that she's feeling about, because we're not actually taking on the problem that is in front of us. Because she feels different. You see what I'm saying? She doesn't feel the way it actually is. She feels it is like in a totally different way. And then we're just going to be treating her feelings. And exactly that's what this is about. That's why identity was the big breaking point for psychology. As soon as they started with this whole identity thing, you can imagine to be anything. You know, that's why people were taking the piss out of this thing completely. Well, I identify as an attack helicopter, right? That's what they, that's how we took the piss out of them. You know, we just blackguarded them because they were so fucking stupid when it comes to this stuff. And it is stupid. It doesn't make a difference how eloquent and intellectually high end you put this thing into words. It's still bullshit. Okay? It doesn't matter if you like a shit sandwich. It doesn't matter if you use perfect bread and wonderful butter and, the best mayonnaise that you could find. It's still a shit sandwich. Go away.
Professors label earlier studies as outdated, Western-based, or even dangerous.
The truth cannot be outdated. You know what I'm saying? That rarely would happen.
Implying that objective findings can be disregarded if they don't fit the prevailing worldview.
Whoa. Objective observations can be disregarded if they do not coincide with the worldview that they have right at the moment.
And what is the prevailing worldview, you might ask? It's a set of beliefs about society and power. And that has not only seeped into the psychological science, but a lot of it stems from it. They often start with conclusions like gender is purely a social construct.
Amazing. First of all, gender is a load of shite anyway. Okay? It's just the way we talk about sexuality. She is a woman, right? The she part of that sentence is the gendering of the sentence, right? The gendering of the constructed sentence. No, it's not a construct. If it's just a social construct, then why are you constructing new genders? Then those aren't true either, and they're just social constructs.
Or traditional family structures are pathological, and then they work their way backwards, rather than looking at quantifiable data first. And this has its roots in the broader intellectual trend in the 20th century that question whether science at all could be objective. I think the turning point can be traced back to postmodernism. And I know that term has become a buzzword lately, but in essence, postmodernism challenges the idea of the existence of an objective truth. It says that everything can be socially constructed. All truths are just narratives shaped by power. And in the context of psychology, they ask, is there really a stable, objective human nature?
So what they're trying to do is they're trying to dismantle this idea of objective reality so that they can, construct a new one according to the way they want it, using power. these people are so disgusting. It's so backward. It's so, what you call them, Rumpelstiltskin. The nature of it all. It is just quite disgusting.
That we can study, that we can discover? Or are psychologists just telling stories influenced by cultural biases? And in the 20th century, several thinkers drove these ideas into the heart of social sciences. You had Michel Foucault, whose work implied that psychological categories like diagnoses, like notions of madness or sexuality are not objective facts, but social inventions used to control people.
Of course. I mean, not that you could see it in that motherfucker's face that he is the mental case here. I mean, all this whole psychology thing wasn't really to heal people, right? I mean, way before psychology, there was this notion of wanting to help people, but they call it spiritually help people, right? And then we had this psychology, which was, Freud and people like him, which was a good idea in itself, but that wasn't what they wanted to use it for. It was actually, and you could call it an invention to control people. That's how they saw the whole thing. That's what they wanted to find out. Is that possible? Now they're trying to, I don't know what they are trying to do. They're trying to control people, obviously. But I mean, how could that work if psychology is only based upon subjective realities and not objective truths? If that's the case, then why would you still try to control people?
He said knowledge is power, and he planted a seed of doubt into the entire enterprise of psychological science. And from that, a new generation of therapists ran with a new approach called narrative therapy. And it states that it emerged from postmodern, post-structuralist discourses that challenge and force re-evaluation of humanism and traditional psychology. And their founders, Michael White and David Epstein, admit that their work was influenced by...
It's just gays. It's just gays fucking with your mind. That's all this is. Look at this.
By Michel Foucault. And narrative therapy doesn't hide this fact. It's built on deconstructing the therapist's authority and treating the patient's personal story as the truth.
And the theory that I use is narrative theory, and I love it. And I think that part of the reason that it works so well with me and the work that I do is that I'm dyslexic. And as a dyslexic person, a lot of the thinking that I do is in story. And narrative theory is all about this kind of long, continuous story that has taught you who you are. And one of the parts of narrative theory that I really love is that narrative theory, when you actually break it down to how it understands the process of therapy, sees the therapeutic process as one continuous conversation.
Yeah, now we have crazy people treating fucking people who are supposed to get well and better. Motherfucker, go get yourself treated. Stop treating other people.
So it's not like there are all of these individually separate sessions. It's one long conversation that occurs at different points that's always building out this bigger picture. And that's so incredibly engaging and interesting when you look at it that way, because you start to see how everything kind of lines up. But also, I think that fits really well with who we are as people, because everything that we experience in our lives informs how we act, how we behave, how we think about ourselves.
Yes, but it doesn't tell you what is actually going on. And it doesn't tell you if any of that is true. And you see, if that's not your concern to find the actual truth, then what the hell are you actually even doing? Then go tell each other stories, but stop promoting this as some sort of a treatment for people who are supposed to get well and better. Damn it.
And narrative theory is all about looking at those things, interacting with, engaging with them in a way that's trying to figure out, okay, based on who you are, based on what you've experienced, based on what you believe about yourself, how do you want to use that information to inform the way that you can move forward in the way that's healthiest for you, in the way that's going to get you to where you want to go?
Which is what? Because then would have to be true. Any of this would have to be true. Getting somewhere, how you want to be, how you want to go forward, there has to be a forward, but forward is relative. I mean, it depends on what direction you're looking, isn't it? So, like, you're going to talk yourself in a corner and you're all going to be lying in some sort of some corner there in a fetus position and going to be crying your damn eyes out because you've gone completely mental case. And you have fun at being a mental case. You can see it in your eyes. Oh, yeah, you know, my story and all of this. Nobody gives a damn about your damn story. It's not that one's life doesn't mean anything. That's the opposite. It just has to actually mean something, and then there would have to be truths in there. Because if nothing is true, if everything is just subjective, then you can forget it all. Because you can never prove that any of this is true. And then, if that's the case, well then, why did we kill Ted Bundy? The poor guy.
And kind of continue writing out this story that you're already a part of, that you're already the main character of.
Main character.
Then we have the influence of Judith Butler, whose gender theories permeate.
Oh my God, look at that. Look at it. I think she has cut this in here a second time, if I remember correctly. So we're going to hear it twice.
The psychology programs. She talks about gender performity, that gender isn't an inborn truth, but rather an act that we all put on.
Of course.
She called on society to create. Then we have the influence of Judith Butler, whose gender theories permeated the psychology program.
Look at this cunt. Nobody wants anything to do with her. Men didn't want anything to do with her because she's like a man. Okay? And that's why it's all just an act. You're all wrong. You're just acting feminine and masculine. And it's all just an act because I don't have a guy that's after me. And she's probably then, you know, she's going to talk about being... I mean, she's probably into women then. But that's all a lie anyway. So she's fucking gay. And it's all gays, you see. We're trying to change the society's view of what men and women are and why we are men, like how we get on with one another and why it is the way that we do it. It just really, you know, I could shoot these people to the moon.
She talks about gender performity, that gender isn't an inborn truth, but rather an act that we all put on. And she called on society to create gender trouble by disrupting the binary view of sex and gender.
Oh my God, of course. Look, I mean, a woman is very different to a man if we look at them biologically. The way that you experience life because of that would have to be different, right? And there's certain things that just simply make up the, let's say, the experience of a woman being a woman in the world, and the same thing for a man. That there would be gender, okay? That there are certain behaviors that come naturally from being a woman, biologically. That maybe you could call gender. You understand? This is pretty simple. And it is obviously binary, you dumb morons, because we are biologically binary, abinary.
So, of course, psychology students are going to read this and then learn to be suspicious of any study that might suggest that there are inherent biological differences.
Oh
the
God.
framework comes first. And
that there might be inherent biological differences. I'm very skeptical of that. I'm very suspicious that you might be telling me a fairy tale here. Whereas when it comes to marriage and when it comes to all this, you've heard it, what women have been saying. A man has to provide. Oh, all of a sudden we have these gender roles all over the damn place. It's a fucking lie.
Actual science is filtered through this lens. Then we have Kenneth Gergen. He started the social constructionist movement within psychology. He began arguing that everything in psychology, emotions, personality, even the concept of self, is not discovered but made by social discourse. In
this is so stupid.
His paper in 1985, he essentially said that all our theories are just stories we tell tied to culture and language. And these ideas caught on. Whole subfields were created, like critical psychology and discursive psychology, and they aimed to find out how psychological facts are socially constructed. By the 1990s, you had mainstream psychological conferences debating not how to improve experimental methods, but whether experiments were even valid or just oppressive tools.
Oh my God. Because you see, all these experiments proved them wrong. It proved them wrong every damn time. And all of their stuff, the stuff that they were saying was true, never stood up to the test of time. When they tested all of these theories, they did it a couple of times, you know, whatever, not even 30% of them turned out to be true or couldn't be repeated. These people are full of shit, and they just want their shit to be true. They want to go into, you know, into the annals, the annals of history, and yeah, look what I said about everything. Everything is just a social construct, even the self. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, come on, man. They're not discovered. We don't discover that a woman is a woman and a man is a man. No, we didn't discover that. We just constructed it. Sure, and why don't men get pregnant? And now we're going to have to start twisting words, don't we? That of course can get pregnant. There is women who identify as men. Did you hear that? There's women who identify as men. You could slap these people around for the next couple of weeks and you wouldn't get tired because of the enthusiasm.
Of a Eurocentric patriarchy. Why even learn about established cognitive theories or universal stages of development if nothing is universal and it's all relative to culture and language?
But then we have a basis again, language and culture, and that would be a basis once again. But then we'll see how successful some races are and how unsuccessful other races are. Oh no, that's just because of oppression, of course, right? Oh, God damn it.
We see the influence of relativism very clearly in academic institutions. I mean, if you go into Cambridge University, which is a leading authority amongst psychology education, they openly embrace this by stating no view in psychology is definite. What happens then is that if no view is definite, then contradictory theories can coexist indefinitely.
Whoa, yes, of course. But then none of their views are obviously of any, of any weight. The thing is, they're shooting themselves in the foot, just like feminism has done it as well. This is feminism, by the way. This is the feminization of psychology. Because if you want to make it a science, right, you would have to go about it as masculine as you can. Fact-based, evidence-based, right? Experimental extraction of information, obviously, and stuff like that. You're going to have to go about it that way because otherwise you don't have any truth or anything of substance. It doesn't matter because I feel, you see? And then all of a sudden you have all this, that's why she calls it psychobabble. It's just a load of absolute creamy crap. Alright? Shit sandwiches. Creamy crap.
No matter how unscientific they may be. This is why bad ideas never die in the psychological field. This is why Freud's thoroughly debunked theories, like repressed memories, are still taught in psychological programs, alongside behavioral neuroscience and cognitive psychology, as though all theories are equally valid. And
the thing is, you'll only find out the actual truth about yourself, not through a psychologist. He can only stand by, give you help, if you are completely honest to yourself. Right? And this regression therapy and all the rest of that, where you bring up memories that you've never had, that's like hypnosis, that's like self-hypnosis, like, putting together a story for yourself in which you are the main character, right? That's what we call main character syndrome, so that you get away with being guilty in your own mind. Because you see, this is the whole thing about morale and ethics. You will be guilty if there is such thing as morale. If there's no such thing as morale, you can't be guilty. You know, that kind of thing? So we get rid of morale and then we can't be guilty. That's the way they want to go about this. Disgusting, beyond belief.
If you go through the prominent figures in psychology departments across these major universities, if you go and look at what they've authored and what they support, many openly question objectivity itself, and they decide on the coursework what students should concentrate on. Like this friend of mine spending more than a month of a semester on an essay that had just precluded that sex and gender are two different concepts. If you take a look at MIT's introductory psychology course, they focus on effective forecasting in their first lessons, teaching that the mind is inherently flawed instead of evolved for survival. Many programs emphasize how people construct meaning in their lives rather than studying measurable psychological processes.
Well, they're going to have to decide which is which now, don't they? I mean, what a measurable psychological process is if it all goes by your feeling. Just like they're not going to just shoot themselves in the foot, right? They're going to shoot themselves in the head because they're not going to get all that shit together into one basket.
If you look at syllabi, you can find Kenneth Gergen, Judith Butler, and Michel Foucault referenced. You find narrative therapy and feminist theory, and you can increasingly find decolonizing psychology, which of course promotes the idea that Western society, Western psychology is inherently oppressive, and it advocates the replacement with indigenous ways of knowing.
Of what? Wow. Indigenous ways of what? By the way, you dumb assholes, you actual complete motherfuckers. We here in the West are indigenous to the West. Go the fuck home to your goddamn jungles and shit in the bush all you like. And then nobody's oppressing you in the bush, okay? Except your own people, of course.
In our continuation of the Liberation Psychology series, we're going to talk about why Martine Barreau, the founder of Liberation Psychology, critiqued so heavily this Eurocentric psychology and mental health framework. So we're going to break down why Eurocentric psychology is rooted in what is called...
You can see in her face and her weight and everything, right? You can see why she has this need for that, can't you? It is amazing. Eurocentric psychology. Yeah, of course.
A colonial epistemology. So a colonial epistemology is essentially this idea that which bodies of knowledge do we consider worthy, and a colonial epistemology is a body of knowledge that is only worthy under a white-centered, colonial, dominant narrative.
Bullshit. That is bullshit. What they want is evidence. That's what this was all about. Otherwise you don't have a thing, because there's no evidence for it. It's not a thing. And it has nothing to do with colonial dominant narratives. It has to do with evidence. But because the cultures that you're going to be on about, those who shit in the bush, right? They have what they're not even called religions. They have witchcraft and shit like that. Okay? That's not psychology. That's not a reality. That's just witchcraft.
Type of understanding. So what we see value in a Eurocentered framework is individualism, positivism, and universalism. So positivism, this idea that our research and knowledge must be rooted in logic, empirical evidence.
Yes, it should be. That's the way it should be, because otherwise you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, lady. Well, actually, monster.
Is it important to have empirical evidence, data, and research? Yes. But can that be the only foundation for how we understand psychology, mental health, and human behavior? No.
Which is then what are you going to substitute it with? Go ahead.
Individualism, this is very easy. A Eurocentric psychology framework sees the individual as the center of their experience and does not see us as interconnected within a collective.
That's not true. That's not true. This is the actual person there. That picture is perfect. That's not true. Individualism obviously is an individual, right? And he is experiencing everything in the collective. But we're not communists. So get away from us, communist.
Or within a larger scope of living systems. Lastly, universalism, which we see a lot in a Eurocentric psychology framework, which is that our human behaviors, experiences, thoughts, feelings, diagnoses, mental health issues, all can be categorized under one singular experience.
That's not true. That's just bullshit what she's saying there. What it's saying is that in principle we all experience the same things. Wet is wet, hot is hot, cold is cold. It's just like some people like it hotter than others and stuff like that. But that's still universally hot at some stage. Okay?
I don't have the sense that these people take the fact that we have to define mental disorders and actually diagnose mental disorders seriously. Because in order to do that, there has to be a certain objectivity available.
Of course, there has to be a definition according to psychological disorder XYZ, right? You need to be able to differentiate them per definitions, and they would have to be true, which would be the word objective. I mean, objective, it needs interpretation. It needs a certain definition when it comes to science.
But since we have completely disregarded standards, diagnosis now depends more on therapists' subjective interpretations and patients' subjective interpretations rather than standardized criteria as we see in the definition of a traumatic event. And this contributes to our overdiagnosing and misdiagnosing, which in turn leads to mistreatment. This is how we end up with nonsense like lived experience. In this shift towards subjectivism in psychology, they started including qualitative research, and that relies on interviews and case studies, and it allows findings to be, or data to be, based on narratives. And the thing with qualitative research is that it allows unfalsifiable conclusions.
Amazing. Which is completely anti-science.
And for something to be called science, you have to start with a hypothesis that someone else can be able to disprove. That's the whole point. And this increasing inclusion of qualitative research is a deliberate move by postmodernist relativists. It allows for their socially constructed view of reality, where findings rely on subjective interpretations rather than measurable outcomes.
Which is obviously completely stupid, because if you're even the subjective will then at the end be objective. Why would I say that? Well, the thing is that you need words, and words need to have definition. Even to communicate your subjective experience and make it understandable to the other person, you would have to agree on the definition of words. Otherwise, I just hear a babble. I don't understand anything that you're saying. I hear the words, I use words as well, but I can't understand what you mean because it's all open to subjective interpretation of definitions. So you can go fuck yourself, which is probably what you're going to do.
They make bad theories harder to disprove, and that leaves psychology open, wide open for ideological activism. For example, you might have heard of the concept of conscious bias. It's the
she means unconscious bias. Yes, unconscious bias.
Except that we all carry hidden prejudices in us. And the implicit association test, the IAT, it says to measure subtle prejudices by how quickly you react to words being said, how fast you associate concepts, like, for example, linking male with career. And this was applauded as revolutionary insight into racism and sexism. Unconscious bias lurks in all of us. And we all have seen how organizations and universities just ran with this. And the American Psychological Association still advocates it, promotes it. We think we can finally understand discrimination.
Oh, and is that objectively true? Or is that just subjective? You see, then now they want to put out truth and they want to say this is true, objectively true. That would be meaning, right? Oh my God, these people are fucking out of their minds.
And now it doesn't matter anymore that repeated studies find that a person's IAT score can't reliably predict their behavior, or that it leads to real-world discrimination, let alone that they can't replicate the same result twice.
There we go. No replication.
Not even in the same person. As early as in 2005, some people carefully said, there's no evidence links a person's performance on the test with behavior in
the world. So it doesn't predict a fucking thing. It doesn't actually show any unconscious bias in any way whatsoever. Because if that was the case, it would actually reflect itself in the world and in the behavior, which didn't.
The psychological community ran with this before the evidence was in. Until this day, people are still sent to diversity trainings based on this test.
That is bias. Diversity training is a bias as well.
It's ideology that keeps it alive. Ideology from a field that once hoped to be taken seriously as a science. Because the idea fits with the ideological idea that there's prejudice everywhere. And the prejudice is malicious and out to get power. Not a bias that is meant to keep us alive, that we categorize the information we get in order to interpret it to our benefit. Instead, the thinking is more, well, the theory must be true, but the tool is flawed. We just haven't found the right tool yet. So why does the APA and many psychologists still promote it? Because within this ideological bubble, acknowledging that implicit bias workshops don't work, undermine the comforting notion that we are doing something good to fight prejudice.
Well, the thing is, we need prejudice, we need bias, we need stereotypes, because otherwise we'd have to, analyze everything in micro detail, which is just not practical in ordinary life, right? Because it just doesn't. If you understand that in America, blacks are responsible for most of the killings, most of the deaths, and so on, and stealing and rape and what the hell have you, then it is best to go out of their way. Because you can't just give every single person that benefit of the doubt. That's what that's there for, That's what it's there for. And these people are actually trying to construct biases themselves against white people, for instance. You see? It is just a huge lie. It is lie upon lie upon lie. And this is feminist. This is, as she said, feminist theory is right in the middle of it all, right? So you have this leftist, communist, feminist theory crap that is trying to destroy society of the West so that they can take over with their bullshit, which is going to collapse as well, of course, like it has always done. But it always leaves a lot of bodies behind, a lot of dead people behind. That's why the West won the war against communism once before, because it's a load of shite.
They have their own hero's journey, story, and they don't care about the individual patients sitting in our therapy rooms. Another idea that just won't die is the self-esteem concept that you'll even now find in the regularly used questionnaires. It's the perfect example of psychology clinging to a discredited idea. I mean, let me ask you this. If a surgeon would still be performing open surgery on something that is routinely done by laparoscopic surgery, would he still be practicing? Would he still have his license? Would patients still go to him? No, it somehow self-corrects. So why doesn't psychology? In the 80s and the 90s, psychologists pushed the idea that high self-esteem was the key to academic success and even crime prevention.
Imagine that what psychology has been doing now for whatever, how many tens and decades, right? It's just that they just push ideas and see if they work. These people should be slapped around the place. They should just, they just open their mouth and should be slapped and slapped and slapped again. No, no, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. Just go home. Fuck off.
California even launched a state-funded task force on self-esteem, even though research very soon showed that self-esteem doesn't cause better outcomes, that self-esteem as a concept wasn't something that we could quantify, that self-esteem is better explained, what we understand as self-esteem is better explained with the personality traits, with the big five, which is replicatable. And even a meta-analysis, including this study here from Baumeister, found that artificially boosting self-esteem does very little to improve performance or behavior.
Yeah,
but despite all of this, entire educational and therapeutic programs are still dedicated to this bogus concept.
Amazing. Bloody amazing. So I'm just going to let her run through the next 10 minutes here so that we get our time properly. So go for it, Hannah.
Self-esteem, raising self-esteem. And it'll surprise most people to hear that this isn't scientifically grounded. And this has direct consequences in the therapy room. An ideologically driven therapist can spend hours with a patient, validating their sense of victimhood without ever looking into cognitive distortions or cognitive behavioral coping strategies or checking for medical issues. Because of course you're anxious and depressed, you're experiencing systemic racism everywhere or microaggression. This is exactly how we get affirmation-only care, where any teen question.
Oh my God. I mean, come on. What the fuck is this? Well, it's my form of self-expression. Well, then you let other people express themselves as well when it says, get away from me. Fucking hell, everything is just fake and gay, isn't it? Oh, I said I let her go on. Keep going.
In a gender clinic is fast-tracked to transition without examining other possibilities. And we know this because now we're hearing reports from people who later detransition who say they felt pressured. They feel the psychologists failed them by not exploring other issues, because we're educating clinicians who are terrified of not seeming woke. And this is because psychology has let something happen. Ideological conformity and groupthink. We have a huge problem with a viewpoint diversity, lack thereof. When everyone in your professional circle thinks alike, faulty concepts like the ones I just mentioned are kept alive.
And it's amazing, isn't it? It's all about diversity. But, I mean, not where they don't want it and they don't need it, okay? It's not that, look, could you keep your gayness and your transness and all that kind of shit? Could you just keep that away from children? And could you keep that away from, like, public places and so on and so on? Like, the pride parade crap, this stuff, do we really have to see that? Do you see heteros doing any of that anywhere? That is disgusting, okay? And we all know it's disgusting. Just stop it.
go unchallenged. We saw this in 2015. There was a massive replication effort done that showed that among 100 high-profile psychology studies, only 36% of these could be successfully replicated.
Isn't that just simply amazing? And I don't even believe that would hold up if you just kept going. Okay, out of 100, 36 were successfully replicated. But if you took more of them, like, let's take 1,000, you won't be at 36% anymore. Definitely not.
And sure, every scientific field has replication problems.
Not like this, though. Not like this. It depends what field it is, and on what level of how new it is that you're the thing is that you're discovering. Like, for instance, like high energy physics or string theory and stuff like that. Obviously, you would find a lot wrong there, but not at the basics.
That's well known. But the specific problem in psychology, I think, is that students aren't aware of this. And I listened to an interview with Peter Boghossian. He's a well-known philosopher and a critic of postmodernist influence in academia. And he had once asked a class of psychology students whether they had ever heard of the replication crisis. And not one of them raised their hand. And so how are we going to fix a credibility problem when no one knows about it? And this is a very old problem. I read an article from 1939 by Richard Feynman. He noted exactly this problem back then. He had a conversation with a psychology student, and she wanted to test whether modifying an experimental condition would change her outcome. And she wanted to ask him advice on how to do that. And so he told her in detail how to do it correctly, this was a question about how she could replicate a finding that she had found interesting. And so he explained, and she got really excited, and she went to her professor and said, I wanted to do this. And he had told her, no, that would be a waste of time. You should do something new. And so this is partly the reason why bad ideas never die or never corrected. So one part is the postmodernist way of thinking. Another is that there's no diversity, there's no viewpoint diversity, as Jonathan Haidt pointed out, that such a large majority of psychologists are liberals, hold liberal views, and not just that, they find conservative views morally bad.
Oh, so this is the point here. This is where we're getting to where we started, and where we're saying, how did they do that? That nobody was damn interested in feminism. Nobody wanted this leftist crap. Just fuck off. Go away from me. Leave us alone. Do your shit, but leave us alone. And nobody wanted it. And how did they actually get to it? That in the 90s and now in the 2000s, that they are actually so powerful. How did they even get there? This is the way they got there. They started treating people. They started going into the schools and treating children and kindergarten and all the rest of that. That's how they did it.
So this was a 2012 survey of 500 psychologists, social psychologists. They found that 85% identified as liberal and only 6% as conservative. That's a left to right ratio of 14-1.
That is a fucking problem. That is a huge problem, because they won't actually take in spirituality as a factor for the human condition. They don't. Unless, of course, it's voodoo or some sort of other, indigenous type of religious spirituality.
And Jonathan Haidt he was at a major conference of psychologists, and he asked a show of hands who's a conservative, and only 3 out of 1,000 raised their hands. And not just that, 37.5% of psychologists who answered admitted they would be willing to discriminate against a conservative psychologist in hiring decisions. I mean, let that sink in. If you don't toe the ideological line, we won't hire you.
It's not psychology, it's ideology, right? So at this stage, we don't actually know anything anymore about is psychology in any way, can it be taken serious in any way whatsoever? I mean, she's having difficulties doing that herself, taking it serious. She's a psychiatrist, this woman, right?
Third factor is the APA. The American Psychological Association is a leading voice in mental health. And not just that, it's the gatekeeper for psychology licenses. Most states require APA accredited courses, internships, ethics exams, and even after licensure, they require this. The APA, it controls continuing education, and not just in the US. European universities follow their guidelines as well. And here's the thing, since the 19th century, the APA has been a political actor openly. They weigh in on issues from criminal justice to immigration, and they downplay research that don't play with their ideological narrative. And how would that even come to be when 6% of psychologists are conservative? So the APA still promotes the implicit bias association test, microaggressions. In 2019, the APA released guidelines for treating men and boys.
Wow.
That controversially declared traditional masculinity as largely harmful.
Imagine. This is what happens then when you have feminism in psychology, right? Now they're going against the men. You see that the problem for them is that none of the shit that they're implementing and that they're putting out there as this is the new such and such is in any way, provable. There's no evidence for any of it. They just use it because they want to, right? And every detail that contradicts that, every study that contradicts that, they will downplay it and they will destroy it if they have to, right? And because men are, the type of people that would want evidence and that would kind of do those kind of studies, they will destroy them if they can. It is absolutely crazy what's going on. And this thing would have to be destroyed. Or it destroys itself. We will see what happens. But this is what happened. This is what happened. It is poisoning the minds of kids, of students, of women, and of men. It is sheer poison. That's what this is.
And it pathologized traits like stoicism and competitiveness, ambition. And in 2021, the APA issued this high-profile apology for their role in systemic racism, and they pledged to embed anti-racist strategies in everything going forward. So in effect, the largest psychology organization in the world with huge backing declared that it's not just a scientific body, it's an agent of socio-political change.
Wow. There you go. Communism at its finest. Blow them to hell.
How's that gonna go? All of this has...
Of course I mean that. I don't mean that literally, okay? You morons.
The direct effect on why people spend too much time in therapy, why they're not getting well, especially after this is sold in reel after reel on social media. Why, for example, are we still seeing this concept of self-love? It helps no one. We know neuroscientifically, it has been repeatedly proven that consistent effort, small incremental changes lead to lasting self-improvement, betterment. That is, studies on habit formation, goal setting, show that if you challenge yourself every day, a little bit, small steps. It's very boring, I know, but that does lead to a measurable psychological and neurological growth. But for postmodernists, this just will not do. They think that self-improvement implies a hierarchy where you, tomorrow, is deemed better than you today. And the postmodern idea states that you deconstruct hierarchies because they're hierarchies of power and that is bad, must be rejected. And self-improvement would also mean that you acknowledge that certain goals are objectively better. It would mean accepting an objective truth, which also is a faux pas in a framework where everything's relative. But I would really like to see the evidence that these hierarchies are what makes people ill, that the oppression through the hierarchies is what's making them feel bad. Where's the evidence for that? And to go even further, where's the evidence that we're getting better by dismantling these hierarchies? Because from where I'm sitting, it's only getting worse. And you're not treating people with the treatments based on these ideas. But still, modern psychologists tell suffering patients week after week, what is perfection? If you change the way you see perfection, then you won't need to change at all.
Wow, that's just amazing. You know, if you just feel warmer, then you won't be so cold. Just imagine to be warmer, you actual fucking morons. Relativity. The closer you are to the fire, the warmer you are. Now, but my experience is just as valid as your experience. What are you trying to tell me? Because you're sitting further away, the fire is colder? Is that what you're saying? Relativism is a load of goddamn bullshit. It's a complete load, mountain high actually, load of bullshit. Yes, it is relative to look at something, to experience something is relative to your position to this thing, right? Obviously. But that doesn't make the thing different. The thing is the same. If you put yourself into the same position as the other person, then you will experience that he does. If you go closer to the fire, you will get warmer. God damn these people.
This wouldn't be tolerated in any other field of science. If you go to a surgeon with appendicitis, and you have appendicitis, you don't go and say, I have appendicitis, you puke and you can't think for all the pain that you're in. And he would tell you, reframe your narrative instead of scheduling you for an appendectomy. You'd be in serious trouble. You wouldn't run because you couldn't run, but he would most definitely get fired. But when I told my supervisors, who were psychologists, when I did my degree in cognitive behavioral therapy, I told them this isn't working. They're not getting better. They told me, trust the process. But the thing is, we'll not be able to treat people unless we move away from this obsession with subjectivity. If we don't start arresting unfalsifiable ideas, stop including all the qualitative research or the hostile peer reviewers. The problem is much bigger than social media or overprescription of medication. It's this shift towards subjectivism and this dominion of unfalsifiable ideas. It's that we have left the field completely open to be manipulated by political and ideologically possessed actors who have very little regard for humankind. And I would say sometimes even show disdain for it.
Wow, that's just quite something. I mean, well said, Hannah. Amazing. I'd love to interview that woman sometimes. I don't think she would come on my channel, but still, because she is from Germany or Switzerland, actually, as far as I have perceived it. So she does speak German. That would be kind of cool, because German is way, a lot more intellectual as a language. Not putting down English at all in that case, but to ask her some questions and get into the depth of this. But I think that she said what she had to say here. I think the rest of it is invitation to...
And that concludes the free episode of Psychobabble.
Well, thank you very much. And you look like Scully, Agent Scully from the X-Files sometimes. And that is just awesome. That's a lot of fun. Thank you very much. And let's upvote this. Bingo, there we go. Wow. Wow. What an episode. She really gets into it, and I mean, I love the way how intellectual she is, right? For a woman, that's quite something. And the way she doesn't try to sugarcoat anything. She doesn't try to pretend, but maybe we should, and so on. And the other thing is also that doesn't mean that therapy is complete crap, and there's no way of helping somebody through some sort of a therapy, because it's the type of therapy, obviously, how you go about it, if it helps or not. And that has an awful lot to do with the person going to therapy. Now, if the therapist wants to implement, wants to get things done in a certain way, infiltrate with ideology and all the rest of that, now you have a problem. Now you have a serious problem, because it's not the person, the influence of the therapist. The therapist shouldn't be influencing at all. That's not what the therapist is supposed to do, because he doesn't actually know sweet fuck all. Because you don't actually know, because this is always the first thing, do you actually know everything about the human mind, the human condition, about the spirituality of a human? Do you know these things? No. So the only way to help is to stand by somebody who is trying to get through and analyze his own mind, right? Because it's our own mind. The fact that we don't actually sit down to think a lot at all. I mean, people are just on the go all the time, and when they're not on the go, they watch television, or they're on social media or something. So it's always input, output, but there's no sitting down and thinking about things, watching your own mind do stuff. What is your mind busy doing all the time? And a lot of people don't actually know, and then they get all these strange feelings and they don't know where they come from, because they haven't watched their own mind's eye, if you want, right? They didn't see these thoughts going through their head, the repetitiveness of them, and the way their mind interprets things. When they get to see that, because they're talking about their mind with a therapist, they will find these things themselves, and they will adapt for themselves, if there's any seriousness behind going to a therapy. So I don't want to say there's no such thing as therapy, and therapy is all bullshit. No, it's not. That's not true at all. There's always been things, even in the spiritual realm, there's always been something like a therapy, something like spiritual help. You were talking to your priest or your spiritual pastor or whatever, right? And they would help you. They would let you talk, and they would make suggestions. Well, how about this and that? Could that help, or could this help? And people would take that home, and they would think about that, because thinking, the way your mind works, is and having your working your mind rather than have your mind work you, is the whole goal of therapy. Anyway, I thought that was incredibly interesting, and to see, under the topic that we were suggesting at the beginning, that we were saying, how did feminism even get to this, right? When it says feminism is a psyop, a psychological operation, yes, it is. It actually is, because there's no truth to it. It's a pack of lies, and there has to be a way, if you want to implement that into society and you want to force people into this, you're going to have to go around the back, right? You're going to have to go in the back door or into the window. You can't go right there at the front and say, look, I want you to do this, because people would just tell you to fuck off, So that's how they did it. Anyway, that's going to conclude our video. And thanks to Hannah. I love her channel. I mean, the link is going to be in the description. Hannah Spear, MD, is her channel. She goes into this stuff quite well. All sorts of different areas of psychology. It's a lot of fun. Getting into the deeper things of what's going on today in the field of psychology. So we're going to end this video here for this week, and all that's left to say is God bless you, take it easy, until next time, bye bye.